Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. So I have a little bit of a follow-up to yesterday's video talking about the TCG ban list. There were a lot of comments on that video. I went through them all, and I saw a lot of people were saying the video, wasn't the best, could have been better researched, all that kind of stuff. And to all those people who are leaving those comments, you know what I gotta say to you? You're 100% right. I completely agree with you. Yeah, so I don't think that yesterday's video was at all my best showing. And there were, like I said, there were numerous comments that kind of pointed that out. Kind of want to talk about that a little bit, just a little bit. It's going to be a shorter video. And also want to touch on some points that I made in that video. But I'll do that here later. First, like I said, I want to talk about the comment section. So like I said, and for the comments here, I'm not going to be showing any of them on screen because I know that some people really don't like that kind of attention and some people like it way too much. So I'm just going to refrain from, doing that. But so there were a lot of comments that were saying that the video was, should have been better researched. I really appreciated people who are like, I do see where you're coming from, but you really should have done more research. That's great feedback. I love constructive criticism like that, and I completely agree in hindsight. Going into that video, I was very, very, emotionally charged. I was feeling very passionate, very emotional in the moment, which I don't mean that to say that's an inherently negative thing. I know a lot of the times that, I was emotional is used as an inherently negative statement. I think it's important to have a lot of emotion or passion behind, what you're doing. But in this case, I definitely let it get ahead of me and, hit the record button before doing proper research, which was a fault on my part. I definitely should have slowed down and taken the time to actually do that research. Even down to some misconceptions I had about the ban list. I totally forgot that Circular got unbanned. I thought it was still banned. As soon as I saw those comments, I was like, they're right. And I tried to heart some of the more critical comments, that I got. So one kind of argument that I fell back on a lot was that people who don't know the OCG very well, criticize that, so I can say whatever I want about the TCG. And somebody else made a point that people who do comment on the OCG usually do their research and they have the tournament breakdowns, the pie charts, and completely valid, 100% correct, and that is something I absolutely should have done. So a lot of people were kind of quick to jump on that, and again, I appreciate that. There was one comment in particular that, well, I'm not really looking for the person's name. Again, I'm not going to say it out loud or anything, but I'll probably end up using the comment in some regard in the thumbnail of the video was undercooked. I could not have said it better myself, and that person was 100% correct. And I really like to strive, in a lot of cases, to be somebody who's informative, right? Or who is helping, to guide players who feel they need some guidance. And in that regard, if I, think of myself in that way, I absolutely need to be doing better in the research department than I did yesterday. So we'll completely not only own up to it, but 100% agree with it. I should have done more research yesterday, and I will try to not let my passion precede that in the future. Now that said, there were some comments that I feel were critical in not as constructive as a way. I mean, I'm always going to get, whenever I either talk up MD in any regard or talk down the TCG in any regard, I always get people who are like, oh, Maxi Defender, which, it's not a statement I made in the video, nor is it a statement I've ever made. That's kind of, if you've ever seen the meme of content creator, I like oranges. Comments, oh, so you hate apples then. There is a degree of truth to that, and I've definitely experienced quite a bit of that. I don't know, and honestly, that sometimes is why I'm a little bit weary of putting out opinion pieces. It's not that I'm afraid people will disagree with me. Again, I very much welcome constructive criticism, and pointing out, especially with the last video, very obvious flaws. I like and appreciate that. But there was even a comment that made multiple points kind of criticizing the video, and some of them were like very spot on. But there was one in particular, and this one I kind of do, I'm not going to read the whole comment out loud, but I do just want to make sure that I'm like not misquoting here. One of the points made was, and this is in reference to me talking about Splash Mage, a card being used by rogue decks shouldn't be the reason why cards don't get hit on the list. Because if that's the mindset we're going to have, then that would mean no cards would ever get hit. Which is like not something that I said. And this is something that I encounter quite a bit. And this is kind of more what I mean when I say like, I'm a little iffy sometimes about opinion pieces, because when it comes to arguments, not just in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or even online, but just in general, there are quite a few times where other people will just put words in your mouth and then argue against that. My argument about Splash Mage was not, nor did I ever say in the video, because Splash Mage is used in at least one rogue deck, it can never be banned. Never, I would never make that like absolutionist of a statement. And I really don't like that, you know, and again, this is something that people will just do when they argue. I understand it probably wasn't even intentional. I don't think it was intentional. Because I even find myself doing this sometimes. It's a very human thing to do, but it's a reason I don't really like arguing, is that a lot of the time people, I feel like, do tend to put words in my mouth, or just, you know, twist statements that I make just to make it a completely different statement. I think it's a more nuanced example of the whole, like, you know, me saying I hate oranges comments, so you hate or you love apples or whatever, you know what I mean? So yeah, but I thought that person did also make some pretty good points, and that's kind of like one thing that I'm like, I just kind of wish that we could sort of separate that, because I even replied to that person. We went back and forth a little bit, and I just didn't feel like there was ever any acknowledgement on their part, because I said, you know, in my first reply to that person, like, hey, I did not make that statement. That is not what I said, and I feel like that's definitely a misconstruing of what I said. And there was just like no acknowledgement, and that's another thing that I'm not a big fan of when it comes to debating on like opinion pieces and stuff like this, is that not only do I find not only do I find some of the time that that'll happen where people will kind of like make misguided, you know, responses. Misguided as in responding to something I didn't say at all. But then there's just no accountability for it either. Or like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes people will sort of make a statement and just let it hang, and then I'll go to challenge it and there's just no response to it. There was actually a lot of that on Splash Mage, which is kind of the one thing I do want to talk about relating to the ban list, in my opinion on it. I think that after doing a little bit more research and, you know, obviously reading all of your comments and getting a lot of the input from there, I think one thing I can definitely hold firm on is how big of a mistake I think Splash Mage being banned is. And I don't know, I saw a lot of people push back against that, but the thing I kept seeing people say is that, oh, you know, Splash Mage is a generic Cybers card, it's too good to be around. And I have no idea what people mean by that. One, because people just don't elaborate on that point. And that's another thing where there's a lack of accountability. Because I even, you know, said in some of the replies, like, you know, how could it be too generic if it's only for Cybers decks, and Malice is the only Cybers deck that's really a problem? And just never a response. There's never a response to that. And that really frustrates me. People will just throw out these statements, you know, they'll get their upvotes, and then we ask them to be accountable for that statement. There's just no reply, and then nobody just cares. And it's like, well, okay. It totally devalues the point of an argument to me if you're just gonna make a flippant statement, not back it up, and then just walk away. I don't know. It's just, and you know, when it comes to the point of Splash Mage specifically, tell me, people, is this scary generic Cybers deck in the room with us? Because, like, what deck could people be talking about? Math Mech? Oh, that sure ain't tiered. Like, I don't know how that's the big bad generic, you know, Cybers deck that Splash Mage is ban worthy for. It certainly isn't Ignister for the same reason. It's not Marinsys for the same reason. Is it Code Talker? Code Talker Pile Decks is like the only thing I could think of that would be generic Cybers, but it's probably just the worst of the decks I've mentioned. There were also people making the argument of like, well, but Splash Mage holds back Cybers design. That's another argument that I see a lot of people fall back on in general that I just don't agree with at all. People said it a lot about Block Dragon. You have to ban Block Dragon. You can't design good rock monsters until Block Dragon is banned. And then guess what? Block Dragon is completely fine. At Master Duel it's at 3 and nobody's playing it. In the OCG it never got banned, and Adamantipator just naturally fell off due to power creep. Rock decks in general just naturally fell off. Like, I don't know. It's Also, my argument against that would be, okay, maybe let's design the cards that would make Splash Mage problematic. Let's see if that happens, and then ban Splash Mage, you know? Like, and then after the archetype comes out, but maybe after the archetype is designed. I also don't understand the whole point of, well, it's generic Cyber support. That's a very oxymoronic phrase, because Cybers is a very specific style of deck, right? And that's not generic. Splash Mage requires 2 Cybers monsters and locks you into Cybers for the rest of the turn. There's nothing generic about that. It is specific to Cybers. And again, the ability for most Cybers decks to use it is not a problem. The only deck it was used in that was a problem was Malice, which was a problem because Malice is a powerful deck. Splash Mage did not make Malice too powerful. And then the other thing I saw is that, like, well, okay, if Splash Mage is too generic, maybe each archetype can have its own version. I've seen that argument too. I've seen it for other extra X staples like Barrel and DeFleur. I've seen it for hand traps like Ash Blossom. I think that's a horrible idea. That's so awful from a design perspective. Like, it goes back to the very simple argument of, like, why use many word when few word do good, you know? Like, what is the point of, like, all right, Marin's is Splash Mage. It's Splash Mage when it only summons Marin's. All right, now Ignister Splash Mage. It's Splash Mage when it only summons Ignisters. Like, or we could just have Splash Mage, you know? And it's also not like, okay, let's say there is a future Cybers archetype that somehow Splash Mage alone would break. I don't think that's... Splash Mage is only as good as every other Cyber deck, but I've already made that point. We could design it so that it can't make much use of Splash Mage. Maybe it's all one attribute and it locks you into that attribute. Maybe it says, you know, you can't summon League 2 or lower monsters for the rest of the turn. I just think that saying ban Splash Mage because it limits design is just... I just don't think it's a very well thought out argument, for all of the reasons I just said. So that's all I really wanted to say specific to, like, you know, the ban list in general. But again, I really have to reiterate that the comments, I think you were all really spot on. And I really want to thank you for providing that level of criticism. Again, there's always going to be unhelpful criticism, but I saw a lot, and I mean a lot of very helpful criticism. Which I'm never above receiving, by the way. Never above receiving. Yeah, as long as it's constructive and it's not delivered in like a rude or hateful way, which the vast majority of the comments, I would say actually all of them were not, you know, I didn't really get that impression at all from people. Yeah, I'm always appreciative and open to that kind of feedback. So, hey, editing this part in real quick because there's one other point that I want to make real quick that I forgot to in my original recording. But the point that a lot of people made in the comments was that you can't be defending Master Duel's ban list because the current Malice format isn't good, whereas the TCG current format is so much better. That's another thing that I followed up on in like the comment section, but I just wanted to make it clear. When I criticize like the ban list here, I am mostly criticizing ban list philosophy. I feel like people saying that I'm defending the current Malice format is yet another example of streamers say orange good, that mean apple bad. Because I don't think the current Malice format is great. I didn't make that point in the video. More just talking about, you know, ban list philosophy overall. I like Master Duel's ban list philosophy in general more because they tend not to do hits like ban Splash Mage, right? Where they're just hitting a bunch of... like, Master Duel is very careful in its hits. We've seen this in Merlin, we've seen this in Oak. And I really appreciate that, whereas TCG really does feel a lot more brute force as far as pushing you into the new pack by making other things less valid, which is something that Master Duel also does. That's another thing I saw in the comments a lot. People are like, well, you make this criticism about TCG, but Master Duel does it too. Yeah, I said that multiple times in the video, every time I brought it up. This felt like people really cherry picking stuff. I don't know. Again, I know people are going to do that on the internet, but like, again, that's also why opinion videos are not always the easiest to make because people just don't argue in a genuine way. It just feels very disingenuous to me. Anyway, that's all I got. Now we're just gonna move on. Yeah, so that's all I got. That's all I got for you. Thanks, as always, for watching and being around. I really do appreciate it. I have a lot of deck primers lined up that I'm really excited about. A lot of, like, more rogue decks. So make sure that you are staying tuned for that. And if you want to see them early, make sure to join as a channel member right down there next to the subscribe button. Not only do you get to support the channel and get your name at the end of the credits of every video, but again, you get to see all of the YouTube content early. So anyway, that's all I got. Thanks. I really appreciate y'all. And that is going to do it. Let's move on to the outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which, by the way, is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.